Welcome to Budget Barometer here on NDTV. Over the last few days, we've been tracking the expectations that critical sectors of the economy have from Finance Minister Arun Jaitley in Budget 2017, and the countdown has begun in right earnest. Today, Kalpesh Maru, partner at BMR and Associates, puts the spotlight on the wish list that the real estate sector has. Mr. Maru, many thanks for joining us on NDTV. Good to have you on the channel. As always, I'm going to first ask you to sort of set the context. And I know that demonetization is a large chunk of the context for the real estate sector ahead of this year's budget, but over to you.
That's right. With demonetization has had effects on different sectors of the economy, but its impact, particularly on real estate, has been severe, to say the least. I think to set the context, if we look at just the demand in the housing sector, that has been tepid for the last 2 years overall, and the demand slowdown has only accelerated with the demonetization. So, to say that the real estate sector is in some degree of stress, I'm talking particularly about the housing market, would not be out of context.
Okay. What about the supply side? And again, just an overview of some of the policy issues that remain for the real estate sector.
Yeah, so I think from an intent perspective, the government has been rather clear in terms of its focus on real estate and housing specifically. And a series of measures have come in to address and to provide incentives to the housing sector, and particularly on the low-cost housing side. What, however, needs to happen is that you need to look at the policy holistically. You need to look at a set of incentives that work on the fiscal side as well as work on the non-fiscal side. So a particular area of constraint. So if you took affordable housing as an example, the issues that plague the sector per se are that 40 to 50% of the cost of construction of an affordable house actually lies with in relation to land and approvals. And there is very little that is being done specifically to address that bottleneck. So even as the government looks at different policies to incentivize the development of the houses, to finance the houses from the people who want to buy it, there needs to be an equal measure, and that's where the center needs to work with the state to come up with a policy that effectively puts all of this together. So if you had land that is 40% of the cost and an approval time frame equivalent to that of, let's say, not so-called low-cost housing, then from a developer's perspective, in terms of the capital that is sunk in and the period of development continues to be long, and that's what adds to the cost. Therefore, you need a whole policy gamut that needs to be looked at, which addresses the policy from land acquisition stage approvals and thereafter to the development phase, and the incentives come in on the development side of it, whether it's to the home buyers or to the developers.
Okay, so let me just pick up from that last statement, which is potential incentives that can come through in the budget to stimulate the demand piece of the picture. And, this is on the direct tax front. What would you prioritize?
I would think three things. The slowdown that the sector has witnessed, the first thing that the government needs to do is to see ways and means to put money into the hands of the people, have higher disposable income, and therefore at a very generic level, a reduction in the taxes or a rationalization of slabs is one, but that is across the board. Specific to real estate, I think a couple of things need to happen. The interest deduction that is available for individuals who buy houses that they're going to occupy for themselves has been artificially low for far too long. I think it's time that the government starts looking at the interest deduction that is available, which is currently at 2 lakhs, and then there's an additional 50,000 that comes with a fair number of restrictions, and they need to completely rationalize this. The higher the number, the better it is, because that will clearly provide a significant incentive for people to then buy houses, because that provides then a tax break, and in any case that results in a higher disposable income. That is one thing that needs to be done. done at the end of the buyers. The other thing that could be, again, important would be there is an affordable housing related benefit that is available to the developers. Currently, that is too restricted. Firstly, it is within the definition of low-cost housing, and then there are multiplicity of definitions between different regulators. So income tax has one definition, RBI has a slightly different variation to the definition. So one is harmonization of that, and secondly, maybe the government now needs to be slightly bolder and define affordable housing in terms of absolute area, which is 30 square meters in the metros, to be a slightly higher and a more realistic limit, because you then don't want to incentivize the creation of houses that are completely of the wrong sizes. I think there needs to be a more realistic expectation setting that happens in terms of the houses.
I want to now turn our attention to REITs, which is real estate investment trusts, and some progress made on that front, but the remaining creases that need to be ironed out. Mr. Maru, what to your mind are the most pressing ones?
Yeah, I think the government clearly has done quite a bit. Last budget had a bunch of benefits that came through. The 2-3 top of the agenda in my mind in terms of the changes that would be good for the industry would be to relook at the dividend pass-through. Currently, the dividend pass-through benefit that came in the Finance Act that got passed last year allowed for a DDT exemption from an SPV through a REIT ultimately to the investors. What happens in real estate structures, as would be true in most corporate structures, is that today company structures are not built in a single tier, so you could have two-level SPVs that are created, and the laws need to be amended to provide for a similar pass-through, even if there was more than one level of an SPV through which dividend was passing through. So that is one clear tax change that would be extremely useful for several corporates that are contemplating REITs. The second one would be that currently the entire law is designed to provide, to incentivize transfer of shares of asset-owning companies into a REIT. Maybe the time has come for us to start thinking about a direct asset transfer and to exempt those direct asset transfers. Now, there are two angles to it. One is the income tax angle, which can be addressed in this budget, and then there is another angle of stamp duty, which is more of a state subject. But each entity, whether it's a central government or state government, needs to do their bit to provide for an ideal structure. Apart from that, there are sort of minor creases in the language of the legislation that need to be amended. But big picture, I think from a tax policy perspective, we are fairly close to what is an ideal structure for REITs.
Okay, fair enough. We always have time limitations and always so much to discuss. I know that there's some scope for movement as far as SEZs are concerned, a wish list there. Some as far as, joint development contracts and commercial properties go, and then a wish list as far as indirect taxes go, service tax in particular. Of them, Mr. Maru, I'd request you to pick the most important one and flesh it out ahead of the budget.
I think the SEZ developer and unit benefit would be my pick. What's happened is progressively the demand in SEZs has been coming down because the tax policy has undergone a significant change. The policy started promising tax holidays and MAT benefits and dividend distribution taxes benefits to the developers. Slowly the government has chipped away at these benefits, and MAT and dividend distribution tax is no longer available as a benefit. And what has now happened is that both the tax holiday for the developers as well as units are getting sunsetted at 2017 for developers and 2020 for the units. Now, I think there needs to be recognition that SEZ by definition are going to be long gestation projects. Therefore, even if the overall intent of the government is to phase out tax holidays, probably they need to start thinking about it a little long term and have a phase out plan which is a more stretched out. 2020 is too short for a unit to come in. 2017 for the developer to commence development again is too short. Maybe that is something that the government could look at.
Well, Kalpesh Maru, for the past few days, in partnership with BMR and Associates, we've been putting the spotlight on the wish list that critical sectors of the economy have ahead of Budget 2017. As I've been saying, this is one of the most interesting budgets in recent times. We really value the perspective you've provided on the needs of the real estate sector ahead of the presentation on February 1st. Many thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Well, after the break, we're going to extend the focus on the real estate sector and its wishes from Budget 2017. Catch that conversation with Neeraj Bansal of KPMG India in a moment.